Okay. Evans, journalist, the history of tennis. Uh, Milano Next Gen Finals. What do you think about this new initiative of ATP?
I think the initiative is great. There's nothing like experimenting with new ideas because you never know if they're good unless you try it. And so well done to the ATP and Chris Commode for having the guts, if you like, to put a whole selection of new ideas for the game out there on court. And we'll discover in the course of the next few days which work and which don't. And as Chris says, a lot of them will get discarded. But that doesn't matter because we'll know so much more. We'll know what works and what the public like and what the players can handle, and we'll all be better informed.
You followed tennis since 1960, you tell me. It was your first Wimbledon, 61 first Roland Garros. So you saw the history of tennis, the amateur, the times of Lou Hode, Rod Laver, Ken Rosewall, then Jimmy Connors, McEnroe, Sampras, Agassi. Do you have one personage of those that I mentioned, maybe somebody else, who is like your favorite player of all times?
I tell you who I think, before Roger Federer, Lou Hode was the best player I ever saw. And people quite rightly point to Rod Laver, who is a great friend and a wonderful guy and a superb champion and a terrific tennis player, and he would be most people's best player ever from that era, apart from one problem, which Rod will tell you himself, that Lou Hode used to beat him all the time. There was a little bit of a generational thing because Rocket grew up idolizing Lou. There was just that gap, and Hode was 3 or 4 years ahead of him, and he was his idol. So Rod had a major problem beating Lou Hode, and Lou had it all. He was the strongest player you'll ever see. He had all the shots. In fact, he confused himself. He said to me he had a tennis club down in the south of Spain for many years, and we used to have beers at the bar, a lot of beers at the bar with Hode. And he said, yes, sometimes I confuse myself because I've got so many options. I could go over or slice or come in or stay back. And sometimes I'm still thinking about which shot I'm going to make when it's too late. So that's the problem of being pretty much a genius at tennis.
Lou Hode.
Yeah.
But Rod Laver is remembered as the greatest, the only one who had Donald Budge and Rod Laver, the Grand Slam.
You know how close Lou Hode came to a Grand Slam?
No.
Two sets. He'd won all 3 in 1956, and he was in the final at Forest Hills, which was then the US Championships, and he was playing Ken Rosewall.
On grass.
On grass, and he won the first set. So he needed 2 more sets to beat his mate. They grew up together, Rosewall and Hode. So Kenny knew exactly what to do, and Hode's concentration wasn't great, and it didn't carry the same sort of cachet then. It wasn't such a big deal. The media weren't all over it as they would be today if someone got that close. And Hode probably lost concentration, and Rosewall beat him in 4 sets. So he was 2 sets away from doing the Grand Slam before Rod Laver.
I see. Rod Laver, we talk a lot about Laver, and this is the year that there was the first edition of Laver Cup in Prague. Have you been there? What do you think about this new initiative? It's not ATP, but
it worked brilliantly. It was absolutely astounding. The Australian Federation, who were partners, and the Czech Federation worked together like clockwork. Everything worked from day one. I think they flew in a lot of Australians to work with the Czechs, and it was just an amazing performance. They had 15...
What was so unique about it?
Well, the format was unique, pretty much unique. And it was named after Rod Laver, so he was there. And you had all these iconic players and coaches. You had John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg as captains. You had Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal playing together on the same team. And it was just sensational, and it worked. The players had a lot of fun, but played hard, played properly. And then when you got to see at the Laver Cup, Federer and Nadal play doubles together, you were sitting there open-mouthed. And so it was just one of those things that worked first off. Really, there was nothing to criticize.
Okay, Richard, the last question. How do you see the future of tennis? Among those players we have here in Milano, who do you foresee as a next big thing? Can they replace Federer and Nadal?
That's a long shot. Shapovalov is a very interesting personality and very talented. Maybe stands out a little bit from the group, but there are plenty of very good young players here. And if you add Zverev, who decided not to play because he's got to play in the main year-end final in London next week, yes, 2 or 3 of these will become 1 or 2 in the world. That's not to say they'll emulate Federer and Nadal or Murray or Djokovic, whose domination of this sport over the last, 12 years now, has been absolutely sensational and will never be repeated, I don't think, not to have 4 players maintaining that level. Apart from injuries, they have never let the standard go down. And they've just been extraordinary. So I think that's unique, but we're going to get great players following on. You always do. I've heard this refrain right through the ages. When Ken Rosewall and Rod Laver stop, then we won't have anyone. And then when Borg and McEnroe stop, we won't have anyone. And then it was Becker and Edberg, and then it was Sampras and Agassi, and all the doom merchants were saying, that's the end, tennis will never be the same. Well, hello, and then we got Nadal and Federer and Murray and Djokovic. And so obviously the same thing is being said now, but you watch, there'll be great players in the future.
Thank you very much. Richard Evans, the legend of tennis journalism.